Hello, and welcome to This Week in James City County. I'm your host, Renee Dahlman. Once again, we have with us in the studio office, Scott Stevens, County Administrator for James City County. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, it's always good to be here. So welcome, or thank you for having me again, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, so I have to tell the folks listening at home, not only is it the two of us in the studio today, we have two video cameras in here as well.
I can see that.
Yes. So we're pretending like everything's normal, and we're going to try to run this on YouTube and on the county channel, perhaps,
All right,
and,
great.
Get some more viewers and more listeners out there.
That's right. Sounds good. We'll see how it goes.
See how it goes. Great. Well, first of all, we just had Thanksgiving. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I had a great Thanksgiving. I keep it pretty simple for my family and friends, and I hope others enjoyed the season as well. Really, weather was a little touch and go.
Yes.
A day pretty nice, and then rainy, not so nice, and then a day pretty nice. But very, very nice time on my side. So I hope you did, and everyone else here in James City County did as well.
Very good. There were lots of people out shopping and spending money in James City County. That was good to see.
That's good for a lot of reasons,
Yes.
but I agree.
Yes, very good. All right. So we've had a couple board meetings since you and I sat down last time. What's going on?
I think seems to be a lot of activity, and I don't intend to cover everything, but I did want to point out at least a few of the items that I think would be of most interest to the community. And if there are other things out there, would always encourage people to call and ask questions. We'd be happy to talk through that. We did meet with our state delegation, and I know our county attorney, Adam Kinsman, is going to talk more about that in a future podcast, but really good conversation. I do want to thank our representatives from coming. We had Senator Norman, Senator Mason, Delegate Mullen, Delegate Pogge. I really do appreciate having an hour of their time. I think it's really good for our elected officials to have them in a room together, and they seem very gracious, and they think it's worth their time as well, is what they've told me. The biggest thing in terms of something probably moving from that is we do have some issues with junk vehicles on relatively small lots that we have a hard time addressing that. And so we are seeking some legislation that would help us do that so we keep James City County looking better. And we'll see how that moves. There's been some discussion in previous years, but more to come on that. And then some related to pets and those kinds of things that, again, I think you'll cover in more detail at another time. Probably one of the bigger things for the community is recycling. We did have conversations with the Board of Supervisors. Recycling, we currently pay the cost, meaning we, the county, pay just under $2 per resident that recycles for about 25,000 households. So most of the county, if you receive recycling, we're paying for that service at a cost just under $2 a month. Recycling nationwide is struggling in terms of it being a commodity, meaning you can sell the recycled materials after you pick them up, at least in the paper and glass side of it for sure. I think the metals still have pretty good marketability, the plastic somewhat, but all of that is driving prices higher. And so we're through a regional group that we refer to as VIPSA that has done the recycling for many local governments in the area. And we're rebidding that contract. And the price increase is going to be significant. And significant means about 3.5 times where we are. So we're currently doing it for a little less than $2 a month. The cost is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 or a little more per month. And so that $500,000 the county is currently spending on recycling will turn into almost $2 million. And so the discussion with the Board of Supervisors is how do we pay for that? Do we continue to do that through the general fund or tax fund? Or do we pass on some of that cost to the residents that want to recycle? Right. And so there is a state mandate requirement to reduce and do 25% reduction of waste. And so we'll continue to keep that out there because that's important to recycle. But I do think there'll be some type of cost sharing with residents that want to do that. So more conversation. It's not a final decision yet. If people have questions or concerns, please ask them to call. But if that final cost ends up being $6 a month, and we're currently paying around $2, I think they'll see a $3 to $5 a month charge if they want to continue recycling that residents have an option to pay. So if they don't pay it, they wouldn't recycle. If they do pay it, they would continue to receive their curbside service as they do today. So now,
is the convenience center included with this?
The convenience center is separate, so we would continue to run that. And for folks that choose to, instead of paying a monthly fee, they just want to bring it to the convenience centers, we certainly would accept it there and would encourage that. And then I'm way ahead of getting good information out, so I don't want to get people too spun up.
Right.
But I also want them to know, we've talked about it with the Board of Supervisors. It has been at their recent work session in November. And so I do want input into people know what's going on. We still have a few months before we'll have the final answer in terms of how we might do the billing or how we might collect that money or what that fee would be. Our deadline for pushing is in the VIPSA, the one that is providing recycling to us as a region, is negotiating a contract. They need some lead time on changing our contract if that changes, which is June 30th to July 1st. But a vendor would need time to staff up or get prepared. And so we are going to be asking the Board of Supervisors to consider a contract with VIPSA in the January timeframe. So that's the deadline pushing. Some of the other logistical pieces we can work through as long as we know what that cost will be.
Okay. All right. What else?
Yeah, more to come there. Mail issues, not so much a board action item, but just an item for me. We've heard from a number of residents that, hey, our mail's not doing right. We are reaching out to the post office. So really just an awareness for the community to at least know we're talking about that. Before I forgot the mail issue out there, it was a comment made by one of our supervisors. Would we look into that? Certainly we don't control the mail.
Right.
But we certainly are working to see if we can get an answer. I don't have it yet, but we have reached out, and we'll see what we can find that we can share with the community as well. So if folks are having mail issues, I would encourage them to call the post office and speak with them directly. But we are trying to do it for the broader scope and see what's there.
Okay.
Other board action items, the Ambler House down at Jamestown Beach area. We have awarded a contract for almost $500,000 that's going to renovate the exterior and put it back into good condition on the outside, and historically good condition. One, that'll protect it. We don't quite know the use for that structure yet, although I think there'll be a beneficial use in the days to come. But it is a structure that we have determined is worth saving and salvaging. And so to get the exterior in condition where, one, it looks better, but more importantly, it's weatherproof again, is important. And that contract the board did let at their November 13th meeting. So that work ought to begin in the near term with hopefully springtime. You'll see a lot of activity in that structure looking better. And then more importantly, as I said, being weatherproofed again so it doesn't deteriorate any further.
And I believe that Ambler House is in the National Historic Register of Places.
I think you're correct. And I should know that. But
well, you have been here a whole month. So.
I'm working on 2 months now.
You are.
So it's coming along. We're rounding up. But things are coming along very well. And I think you're absolutely right about that in the Ambler House. And then the final, I guess, large item I'd want to just mention is the school year-end spending plan, where they have their year, which closed out on June 30th, and they had a surplus of funding. They have historically asked the Board of Supervisors to fund some items that are needed within the differing schools. And so we have had some debate again, at their November 13th. The board deferred action on it, asking some questions, which we're getting responses, or actually have already received those responses about the funding. And overall, it's just under $2 million of sort of excess money that they're asking to spend on various items. Percentage of their budget's probably around 2%. Their budget's right around $100 million. So it's a fairly low excess that they have in terms of percentage. But items they're talking about are improvements to school entrances, replacement of some buses, some bleachers, textbooks, trucks, snow removal equipment for school sites, War Hill track improvement, a well removal that's at one school system that's no longer needed, that just is a safety concern of getting rid of a sort of a hole in the ground or that well. And so things that I think are reasonable things, and that's what the board is working through. Are they items that need to be repaired? And again, getting answers to that. And I think you'll see the board consider that again at their December meeting. But a lot of discussion on that item. And is it, one, why do they have the leftover money? And I think that's a reasonable question. And two, what are they going to use it for? And so those are conversations that the board is having.
For our listeners, I think quite often people misconstrue the relationship between the county and the schools, particularly as it pertains to budget. Can you talk about that?
Well, I can to what I know in 2 months.
Okay.
As you know, there is some state funding for schools, and as I understand, they're a very small part of the budget overall. We, James City County, and then Williamsburg jointly fund the schools, where James City County is funding about 90% of it, Williamsburg about 10%.
Okay. And
then the state comes in and pays some of the salary side. So we fund all the capital side, all the buildings, all the maintenance items, and then some of the salaries, and we mirror up with the state, and they help on some of the salaries as well. Okay. But it's a significant part of our approximately $200 million budget. $100 million of it are very close to that as schools, a very large part. So it is significant in our budgeting and what people are paying through their property taxes. And so that's one of those things that in a growing community, schools are going to outgrow what they have. And that's another part of our discussion that's going on and will be more of the joint meeting with between the various school boards, the Williamsburg City County and the James City County Board of Supervisors. It's happening December 6th, I believe.
Okay.
So that meeting is scheduled. It is December 6th, just confirming my notes. And there'll be more discussions about the need for more schools and the capacity of the current schools. And there's been a lot of discussion over the last 6 months going on about what's the right, when do you add a school, right? It's a significant expense to add a school. So when you don't want to do that just to do it, you want to do it when the demand's here so that we don't have students in trailers for a significant or extended periods of time. And I do think in a growing community, that's going to continue to be a problem. And fortunately, we are a growing community, and that's a plus in most every way, but it does come with some capital expenditures to meet that need, and schools being a big part of that. And so people are going to hear more about that during the joint meeting. The need for schools, what that's being based on. It is low growth projections are what the school board has used. So it's using low growth projections, which has been fairly accurate in past years. So it's a conservative approach to when we need more schools. So, but that's coming. And I think where there will be is a new elementary school and then expansions to our existing 3 high schools. And so that over the next 5 or 10 years, you'll hear more about that, I'm sure.
All right. What else is going on?
Just some things outside of, I guess, the Board of Supervisors meetings and things. I've continued to meet with groups throughout the community. I continue to just be amazed with the quality of people and their enthusiasm for James City County and their love of the area. We ran into a couple last evening that had been here 50 years who just talked about it being a great place, and they have seen it change, and they still are excited, and they're involved in the community. But we just happened upon them in an ice cream shop that Monique and I walked into the other night. Very nice conversation. And those folks are very representative people that I continue to stumble in, whether they know I'm the county administrator or not. So I think that speaks really well for the people that are here, that how they treat people they know or don't know in the community. I just want to commend our community for doing such a nice job of that. I did have an opportunity to go to the Jamestown settlement where they had opened their tenacity exhibit, which is there for a period of time. And what I would encourage people to get out there as a James City County resident, you have free access to the Jamestown settlement property. And so it's a real asset to go out there and take a look. And the tenacity exhibit is really meant to highlight the women of Jamestown Colony and their role in it. And it's not terribly well documented. And what you find is they have a lot of names. And with some of the names, they know what happened to those people over time. With many of them, they just don't. They know they came. They know they were here a few years, but then the records of them, they just aren't finding them yet. So it's still a very touching exhibit, very thoughtful and very well done. And I would encourage people to take a look. And it's there for a while, so you don't have to go in December, but you don't want to wait a year or two and then miss the opportunity to see it. So I would encourage that. And then along the same lines, we had an opportunity, Dr. McGlennon, our Board of Supervisor member, and myself went out and met with Dr. James Horn, who's the lead archaeologist now at the Rediscovery Jamestown side. And he walked through the site with us, showed us their museum, which are really artifacts, and mentioned all the artifacts that total in the millions of artifacts they have pulled out of the site, talked about the archaeology, talked about the digs that are going on and the number of things. And residents can come out and actually talk to the archaeologists while they're doing their work, which I think is really an interesting experience for those that want to know what's going on and why. The one thing I hadn't really thought of or considered is that archaeology gets better and better as technology gets better and better. So they work really hard to dig a site and get what they can from it, but to also put it sort of back together and leave it so that as technology gets better, they can figure out more things in future years. And I guess that makes sense, but I had never really thought of it that way. And so they're working towards a lot of activity in the summer of 2019. So we'll talk more about that in future podcasts. But I would just encourage the community to be aware and pay attention and try to be part of what's going on here. I think it's in July 2019. It will be significant in terms of the Jamestown settlement and the work that's going on out there. So pretty exciting and pretty interesting to have that close by.
Yeah, we are very fortunate. And I think something people need to know is that the state side, Jamestown Yorktown Foundation that owns the settlement, that is the one that we can go to for free as residents.
Okay, good.
The island one, Jamestown Rediscovery, is a national park system, I believe, but they have free days. And I think they have for 3 days a year. And they're also not in December. So people should look for that information.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. I did know that. I've heard that a time or two, but I think we can't say that enough to help people understand what's free all the time and then what's free sometimes.
Right.
And so I appreciate that clarification in that as well.
Something that we say at our house is boats or bones, because the state one is the boats.
All right.
And bones with the archaeology is
Very
the federal
good.
one. Mm-hmm.
Very
That's
good.
what we do. Yeah. Just a little tidbit for the day.
That's right. That's right. Other things, I did go out and visit our JCSA, or our sewer authority employees. Doug is their general manager, works for the board, so those employees don't work directly for me.
Okay.
But I did appreciate Doug allowing me to come out and just talk with his staff. I think they're integral into what we do as a county and important for the community.
Absolutely.
And I wanted them to at least have an opportunity to form an impression of me and me form an impression of them. And they're folks that behind the scenes are working day and night, cold and hot, out there when the water's off, fixing it for those of us that want that service, which are most of us, water and sewer.
Absolutely.
And again, so that was a really good meeting for me as well in terms of just other groups within the community. Had the opportunity to attend the City of Williamsburg State of the City last night. I thought they did a really nice job of putting it. They had a great audience there and a fairly easy mingling time ahead of it, and about a 30-minute presentation where each of their mayor and council members had some comments to share, which I thought was an interesting way and a good way to do that. And then at the end of their meeting, they did make a motion and appointed Andrew Trevette as who's their interim city manager, as their city manager. And I will say, Andrew's been extremely helpful to me of giving me the backstory and history, and I've enjoyed working with him these first 2 months. And so I want to congratulate him and look forward to many years of working together. And Andrew probably said it best himself, is this his first job where he is a city manager. He's been assistant in a number of areas. And to start out in Williamsburg is quite a story. It's going to be hard to beat that. So I think he's really excited to be here. And again, I just want to congratulate him and look forward to working together with him in the years to come.
All right.
He's been a big help to me so far.
Very good.
We did hold our business celebration a month or so ago. We recognized H&H Medical as our 2018 Captain John Smith Award winner. They were really excited to be there. I had not had a chance to meet them before, but their president, Paul Harder, invited us to come out and take a look. And so Jason Purst, our assistant county administrator, and I went out there a week or so ago, looked through their facility. Pretty amazing what they're doing here in James City County. And they moved their business from Gloucester here some years ago. And they're doing primarily medical packaging for supplies to be used in the field by our military personnel. And so they're compressing it. One is high quality products, some of which they've developed, some of which they bring in, but they are compressing it into packs that can then be easily carried and used to address everything from simple injuries to pretty significant things where you may have a bullet hole through your chest and you're trying to get somebody stabilized so you can get them back. And it's pretty amazing to me to see that going on here to help our country really worldwide and provide that service to our troops. So I'm pretty proud to have that group here in James City County, and Paul Harder, their president, couldn't be more excited to be a winner of our award, but also to showcase what his business is doing and something that they started many years ago that's grown into a successful business here. So we wish them much future success. They seem to think they were going to have more work coming. I hope that to be true, and we'll work with them all we can on the economic development side to make that go forward for them.
Absolutely. Very good.
So a couple final things. I do serve as our Virginia Peninsula Regional Jail Board as a board member there. So I've had a couple meetings there. I don't know all about the jail other than I've been to the facility a couple of times.
As a guest or as a...
I've been as a board member.
Oh, as a board member.
So I'd say
just needed to clarify.
Yeah, well, as a board member a couple of times. And I do plan to go back and tour the jail. I've not done that yet. But our superintendent, Tony Pham, has been there, I think, a little over a year. And what I've heard from the other board members, Tony's done a really good job of looking at cost and trying to figure out where, one, we can reduce costs. And he had some areas, particularly in the pharmacy side of things, where he was able to reduce cost in the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then also where he can generate revenue, meaning if we have some empty beds, how does he work it out to be set up so other agencies could bring in their inmates and be in our jail and pay us to be here, so that we as the local governments don't have to carry as much of the burden. And I think he has, but looking at the financials, talking with the other board members, he seems to be doing an excellent job on both those fronts. And so I've enjoyed learning about the jail and working with our superintendent out there. And just wanted to mention, I do think they're providing a needed service and looking after the community to the best they can. So I just want to commend him for that. And what else? That might be all of the lists that I brought for today.
You had a good list. That's a lot of good information.
Well, might be more than folks want to know, but it's one of those balancing things of trying to say enough to make it interesting. And if they have questions and we haven't answered it, I certainly would ask them to give us a call or find us through email or however they can get to us, and we'll be happy to try to answer their questions.
Absolutely. And the website for people at home is www.jamescitycountyva.gov. And that while you're there, I'm going to go ahead and plug the podcast if I can.
Yeah, sure.
While you're there, you can find our podcast at the /podcast, and you can leave us ideas for future shows. Let us know if you like this video thing or not. If we need to expand this, we'll see how that goes. So, as you know, I have a couple questions I have to ask you.
Great.
That have nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far. Okay. Now, we're being videoed, so if you really don't like a question, you can just say, and I'll just move on to the next one. Okay. We can have like a
sounds great.
Sounds great, but they're not bad. They're easy, but they're controversial.
All right.
Okay. Especially the first one. First one deals with pizza. Okay. What has to be on a pizza for you?
That's easy. My mother taught me to eat whatever was put in front of me. So for me, if I have cheese pizza, that's great. If I have a pizza where you can't see the cheese, that's great.
Okay.
If I have a preference, I'm pretty simple. Pepperoni and mushroom is where I would choose.
Okay.
But if you put a slice of pizza in front of me, I'm going to eat it. Doesn't matter. So
now here comes the controversial part.
All right.
Pineapple.
I've had it. It's okay. Would I eat it again? I would. You're talking about pineapple on pizza,
yes.
I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, very good. Now, I'm okay with that. I probably wouldn't push that on everybody else because I'm not sure everybody is. But for me, that's okay.
All right. Well, good. Now we know. All right. Second question. I think it's more important. It deals with zombies.
Oh, great.
Yes. Okay. So there is going to be a zombie invasion that's going to come to James City County, and we have to prepare.
Great.
And you have to set up your zombie team of who you're going to have there on the front lines with you battling the zombies. Okay. Now, these folks can be real. They can be cartoon folks. They can be living. They can be dead. Completely up to you. So who would name three people for your zombie team?
Oh, my goodness. What a tough question. You get into all these things and superheroes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I need our police chief because I need somebody who knows the lay of the land, right? Even with a superhero, I need somebody locally. So I definitely bring the chief in and then he can have his resource where need him. Okay. Always a fan of the Hulk. He hadn't met a zombie or anything that seemed to bother him at all.
Okay.
And so I'd take him along. And then I think I like Wonder Woman. Maybe I get something out of these zombies and what they've done or do. And she's been pretty tough when she's had to fight as well. So if I had to have three, I think those would be my three.
Wow. Great job.
There'll be opinions will vary on that, but put on the spot in this moment, those three would work for me.
I think you did a good job. All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming back, and we're going to hopefully have you back next month.
No, I expect to be back on a pretty regular basis.
Good.
And then, I would tell everybody it's the holiday season. Please look after one another. Enjoy the holidays. There's a lot of good things going on in the community. Really kicking off this December 1st weekend. I know there are a lot of activities. So enjoy the holidays with friends and family, but also look after your friends and neighbor. I think that's always an important message for us to remember. Not everybody, it's a happy time for most, but not everybody. And we need to just be mindful of that and help those others where we can. So happy to come back anytime. And I really appreciate you having me today.
Great. Thanks so much.
All right, Renee.
Well, that wraps up this episode of This Week in James City County. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, take a moment to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we will talk with you next week.